Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Let's see, we're at 12:31. Hi. um, Welcome today. My name's Whitney Richardson. My pronouns are she, her. I'm Associate Curator at the Asheville Art Museum, and I am thrilled to welcome photographer and digital artist Liz Williams for today's member program. If you've been downtown at the right time, you've probably seen some of Liz's work projected throughout downtown Asheville, as well as on the Asheville Art Museum Biltmore side. These projections were created in collaboration with Al Murray, who I see is joining us today as well, and Southern Equality Studios. The imagery that they used focused on racial and LGBTQ equality and equity. I hope you've had a chance to see this work either in person or maybe on their Instagram account. It's very powerful, absolutely powerful, and I hope you've gotten the chance to see it. Before we get started today, I have to go over the rules. Let's see, housekeeping for all of our attendees. Number one, please note that all microphones are muted by default. We're recording today's program, so if you prefer not to be recorded, make sure your video remains off. Both the microphone and video camera symbols are at the bottom of your screen, and they should have red lines through them if you want them off. This recording will be shared in our museum's on our museum's YouTube page, as well as in our next e-newsletter. If you'd like to ask a question, this is the important part, and Liz, I see you're on here too. If you have a question, go ahead and type that in the comment box. After I turn this over to Liz, I'm going to keep an eye on that comment box, and we'll stop halfway through, go over some questions, and then open it up at the end if there are any more questions out there. We will be sending out an evaluation to all attendees after today's program concludes. The information you provide through these evaluations is important for us when applying for grants or reporting on programs, so please do take a few moments to fill that out. And finally, I want to thank all members and supporters of the Asheville Art Museum. It's because of you that we can continue serving our community. If you're able, visit the support page on the museum's website to make an additional gift or encourage your friends and family to become members as well. We are grateful for all that you do for the museum. And Christy in the chat has actually just shared our donate page for the website. I am so pleased to see the turnout for this today, and I'm excited to introduce today's speaker. Located in Asheville, North Carolina, Liz Williams has worked as a visual artist for 10 years, exploring the line between the real and fantastic elements of life in the South. In a variety of media, including photography and illustration. Her work ranges from t-shirt designs calling for the dismantling of anti-LGBTQ legislation for Equity North Carolina, to portraits of nationally acclaimed musicians, to animations of family cats. She's the program manager for the Campaign for Southern Equality's for the Campaign for Southern Equality's Southern Equality Studios. A project that explores how the arts can be a catalyst and force in achieving lived and legal LGBTQ equality across the South. Through her work with SES, she has received the Zedek Impact Award and the Center for Craft Futures Fund. Now, let's see, Liz, you're unmuted. All right, everyone, please join me in welcoming Liz Williams, and I'll interrupt again halfway through with some questions.
All right, well, thank you so much for having me here, and I greatly appreciate it. This is a humongous honor, and I'm a little nervous, but it's great to see really sweet, friendly faces. So I'm going to start sharing my screen now, make sure that I have my sound on, optimize for video clip. My wife, who is a teacher teaching virtually, she has trained me well with remembering to do that. Okay, so here we go. Boop. Throughout my adulthood, I've been more of a wallflower or introvert outside of my role in customer service. I would cherish the time of being in my comfortable house and making artwork that was just personal, and I would form a practice of escapism through that work. I had helped with a few orgs in the past with graphic design work, but nothing on a consistent basis and nothing that really anchored me. I'd make personal protest work that was fueled by anger and fear, but that work was just a fragment of what I was feeling after 2016. By 2018, I'd become a little desensitized to making art that spoke on the current state of the world and my place in it. I at times felt depression and hopelessness. But then one fateful summer, there was a design contest announced through Campaign for Southern Equality, and it was calling for some designs for Pride Month. And I was really excited about it, and something was lit inside of me, and I created a few designs, and I won. I won the design contest, and I was super stoked about that. And it was definitely something that I needed because it was a reflection of bright and happy feelings, which sometimes you have to put it out there in the universe to have it come back to you. And that definitely helped. And after that design contest, CSE, Campaign for Southern Equality, they reached out to me again to help with creating some art for their Y'all Means All event, which is their annual fundraiser. And so I created this design, and they loved it. And I loved that they loved it. And I was excited to go to their annual event, and it was sweet and really brought up my spirits. But it was one day, and out of 365 days after 2016, it's great, but there was one day. But later in 2019, Jasmine Beach Ferreira reached out to me to see if I'd want to partake in their Artist in Residence program that they were introducing. Art has a place in the movement for equity and social justice, and CSE wanted to bring that place into their practice. Accepting her invitation changed my life forever. It gave me focus and direction to bring light to the narrative of the Southern experience of the LGBTQ community. And I was given a way to reach out of my introverted shell and expand my relationship with the queer community in a multitude of ways. For my first deep dive into CSE's art program, Southern Equality Studios, I had the privilege to work on a series with Al Murray, who is a multi-talented genius and metalworker. The show was titled Uprooted, where we collaborated with local queer artists and uplifted their place in their safe spaces and the roots of their upbringing that informed those spaces. I created the ethereal portraits, and Al created the mind-blowing kinetic metal sculptures that you'll see in a moment. Initially, the series was a challenge because despite 35% of the LGBTQ population that lives in the South and a great deal in Asheville, we only knew a couple of queer artists offhand. And this further highlighted the importance to build our connections with queer artists in this community. And here is a slide of photographer Veronica Mclean, who used to live in Asheville, but now lives in Atlanta. And before was my wife, Amanda Trader, who was in the other video. Anyway, she's off camera. And here is one of Al's amazing kinetic sculptures I was mentioning before. And I really love it because the roots of our origins kind of seem like a roller coaster. And I love that there's like a little nest that's going around this roller coaster. And in a way, the bottom piece, it kind of reminds me of adulthood, of just clocking in and clocking out of work, just the monotonous rotation. But that's one of Al's wonderful sculptures that was featured in the Uprooted show. And then here is another one that is really cool that has a toy xylophone that is being hit by a gun shell, a rifle bullet shell with roller skates with a little nest inside of them. And it looks kind of like a train because Some of those items were elements in people's upbringings, including guns, which is interesting and at times sad. But so after that series, in 2019, we realized that we wanted to continue building on this community and learning more than just a handful, learning about just more than a handful of queer artists. So we started up the Queer Artist Meetups, and we would meet monthly at Revolve Gallery, and we would discuss our needs and inspiration and try to provide any mutual aid if needed. But it was a really sweet space. And when the pandemic pushed everyone to socially distance, we really thought about how we could stay connected and how to stay hopeful. We decided to take the meetups online via Zoom, which helped reach out further than the immediate area of Asheville, and we were able to reach the 13 southern states. We reached all the way up to Pittsburgh, and we reached all the way down to Peru with members, and it's been really great and exciting. And with this virtual space, we were figuring out ways to navigate the scary times of the pandemic. And it is hard, and it was hard, but it seemed a little bit more manageable. And then Ahmaud Arbery was murdered, and Breonna Taylor was murdered, and George Floyd was murdered. And I felt a rage and a depression, and I knew that I was not alone. And I tried to process this through making self-expressive work, but I needed to be in community and create work that touched upon these lives stolen. And because their lives informed this community, as well as the lost lives of our Black trans siblings, Tony McDade and Nina Pop. And I went to a protest, and it was cathartic, but more was needed to heal. And after the curfew was implemented, this town, especially the Black community, felt even more violence and trauma forced into their lives during this COVID pandemic. Al and I felt a calling to do something to address the injustices, violence, and the trauma that has repeatedly occurred in the lives of the BIPOC and queer communities since the colonization of this country. But until the curfew was lifted, we felt kind of helpless with this pandemic and the violent police presence in our city. Eventually, the curfew was lifted, and so we found a way to do something to shine a light on the whole range of experiences people were having in that moment. In the middle of displays of pain, frustration, and anger, it felt important to express grief and also to honor lives. It felt important to amplify a call to action against systems of injustice, to pinpoint the places in the city of Asheville where we as a community ought to push for change, and to also point to the truth that we are all participating in a society built on systemic racism and white supremacy. CSC had thought of public projections before, but didn't have a necessity to figure out how to make it happen until that moment. The projections were a response to figuring out what is our hope right now and what can we do to make it happen. And I'll show you later in this presentation how we created these projections. So I created these images, and they came from a place where I needed to create work that went further than the images of these lost lives portrayed in the photos shown on the news. Oftentimes, when I see images like the ones of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Tony McDade, Nina Pop, Ahmaud Arbery, and so many others, I can't help but think that these are the images that they will be remembered by. And the images often fail to represent that these people had hopes, dreams, love, and loved ones. These types of stagnant images circulated in the news promote the desensitization of police brutality, bigotry, and transphobia. I felt if Al and I were going to work to address these lives stolen through murder, I had an obligation to pay my respects by trying to add the element of their irreplaceable presence in the world. I wanted their portraits to reflect light, and I utilized the ethereal elements of the stars to symbolize that although they are gone, their presence mattered and will continue on like stardust. The roses are multifaceted in their interpretation. Roses have been used for mourning, for love, as well as victory. And although we have lost so many people, we still march on for lasting change in this country and work towards a victory with that. Here you can see the video we projected on the museum, and the video doesn't have any sound. So I'm just gonna press play real quick. And just for time's sake, I'll speed it up a little bit. And I wanted to create images utilizing these symbols that called upon the community to defend Black lives because our futures matter in so many ways. Initially, we wanted to put a spotlight on one of the most prominent symbols of white supremacy in our city, the Vance Monument. And the Vance Monument is an obelisk that was created to honor the former slave-owning, treasonous Confederate soldier and North Carolina governor, Zebulon Baird Vance. The monolith, funded by the United Daughters of the Confederacy, is located at the former site of the Buncombe County Courthouse, a courthouse that was used as a location to sell slaves and estate sales. The symbol of violence, much like other public monuments and statues with ties to racism, does not reflect where we need to be in 2021 or at any time. And just go back to this. Okay. And after creating this work, we set out to find a place to display it. The Vance Monument was an easy decision for one set of graphics, but the actual art museum was an amazingly serendipitous canvas. A great art museum is a cultural time capsule that holds up the mirror to our society through the representation of diverse voices, visions, and calls to action. It plants seeds of inspiration and social commentary in viewers, and hopefully from those seeds, real conversations and movement for social justice will occur. So it was so exciting that downtown, next to this display of white supremacy, was this beautiful art museum. And I'm so glad that after we projected that y'all were so supportive and reached out to see how y'all could be connected. We didn't know what the reception would be. And by the way, on this Vance Monument, that is the Juneteenth flag, just in case y'all wanted some clarification. So this is another angle of the projection that we had on Juneteenth of George Floyd. So here is a video that was done on Juneteenth, and I want to make sure that it isn't too loud, because sometimes it feels as though the sound can get a little intense, especially with honking. So this is a video of the projections that happened on Juneteenth, and it was really powerful because it was also happening during the Jerry Williams protest, which was a motorcade protest that went all around Asheville and I believe Hendersonville in protest of the officer who killed Jerry Williams' suspension being lifted. And I didn't know their route, but turns out that it was going through downtown, and fully support that protest. So that's a little bit of it. And we didn't know the reception of these projections, what they would be like. The point was to fuel change and to lift up voices of the community, to tell the truth and to create hope. And whoops. Okay, here we go. And I wanted to create a portrait series that honored the many Black lives stolen this year. But the images I kept seeing of people who'd been murdered were horrifically growing more than I could process. Initially, I thought I could absorb these moments and continue this portrait project, but it was becoming too traumatic to handle, and I wasn't able to give the proper time and care to the portraits. I still needed to create work that spoke to the community and encouraged and inspired action, and that included continued work that spoke on others in the Black community that featured queer and trans artists, writers, singers, and were all art activists in some light. For the end of Pride Month, I featured quotes from these voices to help light a fire in us all to continue to work tirelessly towards justice and equality. People portrayed in those projection were Bayard Rustin, who was part of the civil rights movement and worked alongside Martin Luther King Jr. and helped organize the March on Washington, actress and director Lena Waithe, LGBTQ activist CeCe McDonald, a trans woman who was wrongfully incarcerated for defending her friends and herself from a violent, transphobic, and racist attack, writer James Baldwin, singer Nina Simone, and abolitionist Angela Davis. After these projections in June, I continued making work that spoke on our needs for justice and equality as a community. Al and I realized that another perfect canvas for these projections, calling for accountability, was the Buncombe County Courthouse. And on July 9th, several volunteers and I were invited to attend and do projections at the vigil for Private First Class Vanessa Guillen and Other Lives Lost. And I'm not sure if everybody knows who Vanessa Guillen was, but she was a soldier who was murdered by another soldier who had numerous complaints about sexual harassment that continuously were dismissed by Fort Hood. And unfortunately, Fort Hood turning the cheek, turning a blind eye was consequential in the death of Vanessa. And here you can see that we had the projections on the courthouse next to City Hall. And at the vigil, we projected a list of demands spanning on different topics citizens needed to be loud about. And I'll show a little clip later of those list of demands. In the projection, there was also a demand of accountability after City Council announced that they would be giving reparations to Black citizens of Asheville in the form of financial support to Black community orgs and programs. And although the courthouse was the perfect place for this projection, the windows presented a little bit of an obstacle. By August 10th, the Vance Monument had been shrouded, but we felt as long as there were safe ways to continue publicly spreading our message of hope, allyship, and dismantling white supremacy, we would. And there were plenty of people around downtown Asheville, despite the pandemic, who needed to see this. So we took to the Asheville Art Museum again, and with a modified version of the list of demands projection, the intention was to pay reverence to Trayvon Martin and all the people lost that have yet to find justice. And this video doesn't have any sound, just to give a heads up. And shortly after that projection, Rachel Zink of Creative Mornings reached out to Al and me to host a Creative Mornings talk. And in preparation for the talk, we made a behind the scenes video with the amazing help of Allison Scott. And it explains how we create the projections, and I will play it now. And this does have sound, but in the beginning, there's beautiful silent drone footage. So just a heads up about that.
set up to do large-scale public projections.
Oh, my wife told me to turn it up a little bit. Okay, hold on. Sorry, y'all. Okay. Okay. And I'm going to see if I can. Oh, Pete's sake. Okay.
So first thing we did was found a projection site, and tonight we're going to be projecting onto the side of the Asheville Art Museum. Ah! So we parked a truck, we packed our bags, and we brought our stuff. And the stuff includes a laptop, a power converter, power, a projector, suitcase to carry all this. Oh yeah, me. Ow! Allison, taping. Thank you. Yeah. All right. So once we have HDMI cable, very important as well, and power cords. All right. So we also have the option, if for some reason our sweet little deep cycle marine battery runs out, we can hook this whole system up to the truck, which is another reason we do it in the bed of a vehicle. And that was part one of how we set up. Stay tuned for part two. Welcome to part two of how we do public projections. Welcome back. So now that we have all our things together in one place, we're gonna hook them all up. Liz? All right, so first you get your computer, you get your HDMI cable, and then you go you hook it up on over to the projector. And while you're hooking it up to the projector, if there's another person, they can hook up your power. So we're using a 750 watt power converter. That's more than enough to power this projector and even a laptop, even though we come ready with a pre-charged laptop. But what that does is that means that we can then hook up this deep cycle marine battery. And the reason I keep saying that is because deep cycle marine batteries work better than car batteries. They are designed to give a lower amount of power over a longer amount of time. Work super well for what we're doing. So once we have that hooked up, we're going to turn on our power converter, plug in our power cord, and then plug in the projector. Here we go. Hey David, how are you? Make sure everything's snug. All right, and now we're going to go to part 3. The projection. Welcome back to part 3. We missed you. So we're gonna do the projection now, y'all. Are you ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Get it out. So the purpose of this video is to show a list of demands for equality, social and racial justice, and the intersectionalities of all of these topics that are discussed with this list. I had my friend Quay Mills do the modeling, and she does an amazing job. That's how you do a projection.
Okay. So, I was wondering, do I need to pause for any questions? Or are we still doing pretty good?
It might be a good spot, Liz. I've got a lot of technical questions for you.
Oh, okay.
Everyone loves your video. I'm getting public and private chats that this is just, they love the how-to video. Let's see, some technical questions. What was the duration of the first video projection you did?
So the duration of the first projection, I believe, was I'm going to say maybe 4 minutes, but it was on a loop, and we were there for, I believe, an hour and a half, or as long as the battery was going.
Right. And in projecting on City Hall, which is a very bumpy surface, or projecting on the museum, which has that nice sort of rectangle, versus projecting on the Vance Monument, how do you account for the different sizes and shapes?
Oh, well, with the the courthouse, we were thinking that it would be good to have like a scrolling so that the flat areas would work out all right with the simple text. And doing graphics, that was a no-go immediately. We realized that. But with the windows, I wasn't expecting it to absorb the light so so readily, which was unfortunate. So it was kind of frustrating. And then I think they started to do some construction, so they were shrouding that with a little bit of vinyl. And with the Vance Monument, that one was all right. We initially like just did a contrasting black background with white text. And Al had this awesome idea of like, let's go and incorporate some animation, like with falling stones for like dismantling white supremacy. And I was like, yeah. And so I made an animation and it was gray stones being dismantled. And lo and behold, gray on gray Vance Monument did not translate super well, but you can still see some of the letters being obscured, which was cool. But it wasn't as effective as I was thinking it would be. Still on the, maybe we'll be able to do some more projections on the Vance Monument since it's still there. Who knows when it's coming down? It's coming down. I'm keeping up with the news. I'm looking. Anyway, and with the Asheville Art Museum, that was really easy. So thanks y'all for reaching out to awesome architects.
People were asking as well, did you announce ahead of time where the projections would be? Were they always pop up? What sort of permissions did you have to get? That sort of thing.
We went, excellent question. So for the sake of safety, we mostly just did pop-ups and didn't really announce it. We would put it on Instagram as it was happening, but yeah, it would just be surprises. And it's kind of, I feel as though it's a little bit more effective that way, kind of like a guerrilla art project. And the same thing applied with the projections when it came to asking for permission. We did not do that. We were looking, like Al was like, it's gonna be okay. And like, I double checked and we were like looking at all the ins and outs of projections. And basically if it doesn't interfere with a business, or if it doesn't go on a private residence, it's usually for the most part okay. And if somebody says you need to stop, then of course we would stop. But luckily people have been really supportive of the projections and nobody has said that.
Yeah, and that is a perfect lead to another question. Did you have a lot of interaction with people on the street coming up and noticing what you were doing?
Yeah, it's a very interesting time to do these public projections during a pandemic. And we've had interesting interactions, especially with tourists. And like, it's usually very supportive. I will say that it's always like supportive and people like, yeah, we need to see that. And yeah, some people, they just kind of like want to hang out like by the truck and see the entire projection. Other people are just like passing by saying, that's great. And then other people want to give hugs, and that's incredibly awkward. But yeah, it's been very, very positive.
Oh, good. I have a question that came up for Al, and I don't want to put you on the spot, Al, but we can always come back to it later. Someone was asking about your kinetic sculptures and your process on making them, or how long it takes. Think about it. We can come back. All right, Liz, if you want to go ahead and keep on with your presentation. Oh, sorry. Al says unable to unmute. Let me see if I can help.
Oh, no. Okay, thank you.
Actually, Christy, can you? Okay, Al, are you there?
Yes, thank you. And
hello.
Yeah, thanks for this, and fantastic work, Liz. I'm always just honored and in awe of how you tell the story of this work. So thank you for doing that today. The kinetic sculptures, Liz and I worked on that whole project over the course of a summer, and I think all the work evolved from, Liz, what would you say, May until August?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like you went into like turbo speed towards the I would say July. You're like, oh, there's like a few pieces I have to do. It was like, it felt like you were working on 3 pieces in like 2 days.
That might have happened, yes. Yeah, so it's impossible to say. They were all sort of in progress, and so it would be safe to say that that those developed over the course of from May to August of that year.
Great.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for letting us know we couldn't unmute you there. All right, Liz, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Please continue to put questions into the chat, and we'll come back at the end with more questions.
All right, awesome. Thank you. So during the Creative Mornings talk, we spoke on the work we have done and how it speaks to hope. We invited the viewers to participate in our next projection by speaking on their hopes and how they will turn those hopes into actions. And via anonymous written submissions on Padlet, viewers were able to archive their responses. And after received the answers from them, I superimposed their answers on the image of Quay and I projected it the following night. And here I am showing a little bit of their submissions. And I hope to continue this in the future through CSE, because I think it was a really powerful project that needs more attention, with displaying people's hopes and also like saying, how are you going to be accountable? How are you going to keep this going? 2020 was a pivotal year for so many reasons, and I wanted to make work that reflected these times, that not only worked to honor those lost, but to call on people to build our legacies as proactive members in our communities. Members who recognize that injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere, and we are going to push against that darkness. It was one thing to echo calls to action, and also it felt really important to inspire hope where maybe there is none or where it is disappearing. And Al and I wanted these projections to prop up people who are working so hard against huge odds. We want to help people believe that things can change and to find ways to bring about the future we want to see. And in October, in continuation of this work of hope, SES collaborated on a project that encouraged voter mobility with help of the musical activist group Brass Your Heart, Amplifier, a social justice design lab, and the Wide Awakes. And we were able to spread music and inspirational images that touched upon various social justice movements that need voters to make these movements stronger. Wide Awakes is a national art grassroots movement created by For Freedom's founders, Hank Willis Thomas and Eric Goetzman. And the 2020 Wide Awakes is inspired by the 1860s Wide Awakes movement that was led by youths that championed Lincoln, opposed the spread of slavery, and supported workers' rights to strike and voter mobilization. The purpose of this iteration of the movement is to create social change through art, music, joy, and civic engagement. And y'all should check it out and see how you can all get involved. And I think because we're pretty close to the end of this time, right? Whitney?
We have until 1:30.
Oh my gosh, oh, how exciting. I'm so sorry. Oh my goodness. Okay, so here you can see some of the photos from the projection. And most of the credit for this projection goes to the amazing artists through Amplifier and through For Freedoms / Wide Awakes. And a little bit of the collaboration is like the text I added, vote like your vote will decide the election, which was the brainchild of Campaign for Southern Equality. Okay, so fortunately, because of the tireless work community organizers, volunteers, creatives, and so many others did to get people to the ballots, be it physically or by mail, we have a new president who's ramping up efforts to undo the damage done by the previous administration. And with this great tide of change, challenges arise, especially in regards to safety. And with the increase in COVID cases and seeing demonstrations of violence and vitriol from Trump supporters, SES has put a pause on doing public projections right now, but we hope to continue one day soon. And one of the immediate ideas that we have for projections is speaking on the gentrification of Asheville. which is definitely a huge pillar of systemic racism. In the meantime, we are organizing ways to safely keep SES work in the public eye through projects with Black Mountain College and Henko Reprographics public art window installation series. I'm also working on building a troupe of young art activists with my work with UNCA's skill set program, which is basically, I'll be teaching kids how to utilize photography and their art activist work. So maybe you'll see a little troupe of kids with their posters speaking on different social justice issues, which is a dream of mine. Let's see here. Along with the projection series I've been working on with Al, I've also been working on other projects to examine ways to participate creatively with my queer creative community. One series is 2020 Visions that you can see on my website at makemesomeart.com. Technology.
And collective creativity helps us to reimagine this.
Okay, there you go. The virtual queer artist meetups I mentioned earlier works to build and keep connections during this isolating time through check-ins, workshops, art business sessions, and art critiques. In September, I worked as an artist in residence at Revolve Gallery and started a project called 2020 Visions. 2020 Visions was a collaborative archive with various queer creatives in the area. Some of the participants were from the queer artist meetups. Some were people I met through the protests that happened that summer, and some were friends who were reluctant to admit that they were creatives. The artists shared with me and the audience the work that they had been making during this pandemic and how they were navigating 2020 before the election. I'll share with you a few of the clips from the series. And this is the intro video. I won't play the full minute though, because it's kind of dizzying, much like 2020 and onward. Whoa, no. Okay, sorry. Oh, here we go.
Individual and collective creativity helps us to reimagine this world. In this time of COVID and the uprisings of movements, it feels important more now than ever. Individual and collective creativity helps us to reimagine
All right. So those clips were excerpts from the interviews that I was doing with the artist, and some of them are listed here with their work projected on them. Here's Brian Thompson. And I'll just read some of the haikus that they made during 2020. Broken lineage. Mom called me today. Her voice beckons me to come home, but where is that? COVID breakup, part 1. Stuporous coldness, Leanne LaHavis cries at the old picture frame. Notes on a recovering people pleaser, part 1. So today I tried. This should not be a surprise, but nothing has changed. Quarantine bath. There I sink deeper, body disconnects from world, Holy Communion. Holy Matrimony. Dim lit living room illuminates the briefing, provokes depression. COVID breakup. Body looks for new beginning, a soft whisper, saying it is done. I'll just read one more. Racist corona. Poof goes black bodies. Here you go, some more hashtags. Pre-made caskets filled. And here is a clip of Brian talking.
I would say that everything that's transpired in 2020 has been really beneficial for me.
Oh, for Pete's sake.
I would say that everything that's transpired in 2020 has been really beneficial for me in the sense of getting back to my roots and what matters most to me, and cherishing myself. The work that is behind me, the work that people can see me doing in the streets and in other ways through advocacy work, is all a love letter to myself, but also a love letter to all of the people that I love, and all of the people that are yearning to be loved, and all of the people that are gone, and their stories and their experiences and their lives buried without any recognition. I'm sending love to them and theirs. And so, at the center of this chaotic year that is full with a lot of beautiful mess, there's love. And I think, personally for me, abolition in its purest form is love. And so that's at the center of the work that I'm doing. And it's at the center of my heart.
And here we have Quay Mills, who was the model for the projections earlier, and Rosa, who took that awesome video that I was displaying earlier of the multiple projections. And Quay is a poet, and Rosa is a ceramic artist. And here is Susanna Aleph with some prose that I will read really fast. On anxiousness and sustaining hope. What a trip and a cosmic joke to feel short of breath in these times. I wish for a lot. Lately, in the absence of free movement, I squint tight and cross my fingers and toes for the big crumble of systems that harm in silence. For dignity and humanity restored, for futures that look bountiful and connected. Some afternoons I get mired in the pit of wondering if we can anticipate the triumph of good without seeming like imaginative children. I reject the notion we are stuck in a loop of greed and blame and violence, and the river here, polluted as it is, reminds me that we just go on and on regardless. I feel small and aware of my smallness, but bigger in the times when I can see our collective shedding, helping and lifting. I worry that stamping out the old will usher in some frantic seizures of power and control. But I am working to believe that seizures might be ours, if we can just keep going. I wish for food and medicine, homes and companionship, rites and rituals, and centuries late but essential reparations for the ones of us most harmed and disenfranchised. There's an absurd patch of daffodils still blooming up the road, even though all the others have withered now. I hitch myself to that kind of surprising, ridiculous endurance. I hope you can too. And here is Susanna talking, if I can get technology right. Oh, oops.
I chose the phrase, art has been both difficult to create and absolutely necessary, because I think a lot of us are struggling with a sense of urgency to document what's happening in our world and what's happening to our friends, what's happening internally, at the same time that there's so much overwhelm of information that can block us from creativity. So yeah, it's been hard to reach for that place, but also it feels like now more than ever we need more art to, you know, reflect the time that we're in.
And this is Caitlin Taylor, and this will be the last clip that I show. And I'll read it really fast. Okay. If I am the love that I seek, I have forever been chasing what isn't, losing my breath to a lie, a shadow. Everyone has a shadow, a dark and untrue expression of a being made of love. If I'm the love that I seek, I have love in my bones. Love is strong and forms a base for graceful bodies to build, but bodies die, burrow into the earth, and cover with darkness and shadow. What happens to love? If I am the love that I seek, I am not a body. I am not my eyes or what they see. I am deep in the background, yet close to the surface. Nothing real ever dies. Love is not born or bred. If I am the love that I seek, I shall want for nothing. No body to complete my shape, no piece to fill invisible holes. I am the love that I seek. I can never lose what I am. Let's see here. Don't want to go too far. Okay.
So I feel as though this year, 2020 especially, the time since the beginning of COVID-19, I have been introduced to myself for the first time. This has been a really transformative time for me because I got sober about 8.5 months ago, and in going through the process of rehab and recovery, it's sort of taught me how to approach life in a completely different way and with a clear mind. And I think that because of that, I've been able to tap more into my creativity, and it's made me more excited and eager towards life and wanting to explore the possibilities of what I have to offer the world. And especially as a Black woman, during these times, I feel like I have more of a desire to want to put myself out there and to create things and to show what it is that we have to offer as a community.
All right. And to wrap up this talk, I wanted to revisit the My Hope projection series and speak on my hopes. I hope that as long as there is darkness and injustice, we'll continue to be creative and shine a light on the inequities that affect us and our siblings. My hope that this infinite game will continue with us as the players who move the dial towards everyone having equal rights. We are in one of the richest countries, and we as citizens and creatives are just scratching the surface of our full potential. To make that happen, I will continue to make work that speaks on honoring the full spectrum of hope. I will continue to honor those who have paved paths that brought us to where we are today, and uplift those who continue to work to build up our collective communities, be it through projections, design work, or portraits. I'm going to make art. I'm going to volunteer to help with food insecurity. I'm going to collaborate with projects that uplift members of the queer and BIPOC community, and I'm going to build bridges and connections, and I invite you to join. Thank you. And that's that. I stop my share now.
This
Thanks.
is the worst part of Zoom. You can't hear us all clapping. Thank you so much, Liz. Your art, all of it that we've gotten to see today, just addresses such critical topics to be brought up through art on this day and age, and we look forward to seeing what you do next. I did get some questions here. Let's see. There was one, and it's a big one, but I'm going to lay it on you. From your perspective, what can art museums and other presenting art spaces do to support LGBTQ plus artists and audiences?
That is an excellent question, and I do not have all the answers. But one thing that I have noticed that I've seen a lot of people excited about is just making a call for artists accessible. Like, if we don't need to have like super academic forums for people to get involved in the art community, and just via like social media, having a call for artists and saying like, are you a queer BIPOC artist? Are you a BIPOC artist? Just those simple types of accessible ways of exposure has been really awesome. And then just having like a simple Google form, that's really cool. And yeah, just connecting with LGBTQ orgs and in the area and around has been really great. That's one thing that comes to mind. because social media is free advertisement, and it just makes everybody feel good to feel as though there is a seat at the table and a welcome seat at that. So yeah, and if y'all have anything that you want to share with us, I'm happy to spread that through the Southern Equality Studios page, and please feel free, if anybody knows of anything happening, reach out to that page on Instagram, Southern Equality Studios, as well as Liz at southernequality.org, and check out the southernequality.org website to see what else Campaign for Southern Equality is doing. And yeah, those are some ideas. Amanda, do you have any ideas? Al, do you have any ideas? Lydia, you got any ideas? Anybody?
we had someone write in the chat, is it possible to do a permanent installation on the Vance Monument? And then someone else, I think it was Lydia, said hopefully the monument isn't permanent, but in the meantime your projections are on top of your truck. I could see how that makes it a little difficult to do permanent, but that's what's great about the guerrilla aspect of it. She could pop up at any time and project them there. Yeah.
Absolutely. And if anybody has like other ideas for locations for projections, give us a shout, definitely. We just have to worry about light pollution and surfaces, like we mentioned earlier.
Well, I'll say.
Okay, sorry, I saw Lydia say my house.
I'll say you popped up literally in our lives at a serendipitous time at the museum. We're trying to work on our new media collection, and was it 2019? What day is it? That we brought our first new media artwork into the collection with Lehan's core. We have up now Question Bridge, which includes Hank Willis Thomas and Chris Johnson and Beate Ross Smith and Kamal Sinclair that's being projected in our multi-purpose space in the museum right now. So to bring to us this wonderful new media project that you and Al and the Southern Equality Studios were doing at just the right moment, that we were so excited to have you use our building as your projection screen.
Thank you very much. And I also just want to pipe up, the Question Bridge is amazing, and y'all should definitely go and see it, everybody who's here. And also there's a talk earlier on the YouTube channel with Chris Johnson, which is really cool. And I appreciate being able to see that. And I think that's the last thing that is on the top of my mind. And I look forward to revisiting the Vantage Points exhibit soon, too.
Wonderful. Boy, you're hired. That's what I have left to do, is make an announcement. Thank you so much, Liz. And thank you, Al, for joining us today and being willing to jump in when I put you on the spot. As Liz was saying, well, this is our last member program for the time being, but we do have a variety of other virtual and in-person programs that will allow you to continue engaging with the museum. Visit our calendar on our website or the museum's Learn page to see the upcoming schedule. Programs are being added all the time, including adult studio classes. Like on February 11th, we have a Vantage Points People, Places, and Narratives, for which Liz will be one of our instructors for a class, so you can get more time with Liz and learn from her. We will be sending out a program evaluation in a little bit, so I encourage you all to fill that out when you see it pop up in your email. And in the meantime, stay well, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for coming, everybody. It was great to participate in this, and a huge honor. And I look forward to seeing you all later. Yeah. Have a great day.
Thank you, Liz.